I've been doing some study from the book of John lately, and in chapter 4, it leads us straight to the story of the Samaritan woman who meets Jesus at the well. And he says to her, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." What does that mean, to worship in spirit and in truth? Well, after taking a look at it a bit, it just says this. Jesus is speaking to the Samaritan woman and telling her that worship is not about a place, but it's about the being and experience of the heart. John Piper puts it this way. He says, "When the heart is far from God, worship is vain, empty, non-existent. The experience of the heart is the defining, vital, indispensable essence of worship." Worship is not true if it's offered in pretense. It must be done genuinely and not out of the motivation to impress others. Truth in worship involves thinking right thoughts about God. It reflects doctrinal truth. Worship is a spiritual act. It's not bound by the confines of a time or place. God is spirit, and therefore those physical boundaries don't apply to him. When we pair this with Romans 12, 1 through 2, Paul adds his stamp to the idea. He says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him." In other translations, it says, "This is your spiritual worship." I think it's interesting here that Paul is saying that through service and a sacrifice of the physical being, given over to the cause of Christ, we are truly worshiping. He's tying together the service of the physical body with the spiritual being and presence of God. So in a real sense, the sacrificial expression of our hearts, which are close to God, whether it be through song or prayer or prophecy or service, regardless of where we are standing or sitting or bowing, is the kind of worship that pleases God. And so let's take heart in this. During this time when we can't gather together in our spaces of worship, that all we need do is access God through the Holy Spirit and to worship him in spirit and truth.